So the question I'm going to answer here is, how are the Russian propagandists, the repeaters, how are they framing and explaining Prigozhin's death? So we're going to look at Richard Medhurst with what really happened, faked death according to the dive with Jackson Hinkle, and we're going to look at what Scott Ritter has to say. And you'll find a certain consistency, even though they have wildly different explanations. And I'll explain how that works in just a moment. So before we get started, I'm going to set the table with Vlad Vexler, who's just 10 seconds of Vlad Vexler. Listen to this.
Already conspiracies are emerging on social media that Prigozhin wasn't on that plane and that he wouldn't fly together with his top brass. Some people will continue to believe that Prigozhin is alive and that he will return to Russia.
And we're going to see that as a conspiracy theory, or that people believe that as a conspiracy theory. Now, let's turn our attention here to, we'll start with the dive with Jackson Hinkle. Jackson is a pretty young guy. He is all in for Russia, and I didn't understand why until I watched this video. So we're going to watch what he has to say about, now he before we get to this point where we're starting, he was saying, well, you know, he's dead, but I don't know, maybe this could be. Now, I think it's this, but maybe. And this is what propagandists tend to do, is they try to question RT, question more, right? And let's just let him talk.
What if this is something else? A kind of almost really as a joke, I put out this tweet. I said, what if Prigozhin isn't dead and marches into Kiev from Belarus next week? Wouldn't be the first time he faked his... My stream last night where we covered the breaking news that Prigozhin's plane had crashed, it seemed quite obvious to me, or apparent at least, that we could assume that Prigozhin went down in his plane. I mean, it was one of two planes that was traveling back from Africa. That was listed under his name, meaning he was the owner of this private jet, and Prigozhin was listed among the passengers of said plane. But then I started to think about it, and while I still do think Prigozhin did in fact die, that is my roundabout theory right now. I do think Prigozhin died in that plane crash. There was, I guess, I had some thoughts. I begin to have some thoughts. I was sitting here after the stream, and I felt like I was so defiant in saying Prigozhin died. And I'm like, well, could he have not died? Is that a possibility? Have I not entertained this idea enough? Because I do know in 2019, Prigozhin's death was widely reported after a plane reportedly crashed in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And Prigozhin was listed among the flight passengers. And everyone said he was dead, he was dead, he was dead. Turns out he wasn't dead, and he had faked his own death.
Okay, so this was an interesting way to open up conspiracy theories in order to attract more attention to him and his channel. And he's going to get a little weird in here, but then he's also going to tell us why he's so in for Russia. Very similar to Scott Ritter.
So I began to ask the question myself. I'm like, what if he's not dead? You know, what if this is something else? A kind of almost really as a joke, I put out this tweet. I said, what if Prigozhin isn't dead and marches into Kiev from Belarus next week? Wouldn't be the first time.
Well, if he did march into Kiev from Belarus next week, he certainly would be dead in short order.
He faked his death. This tweet blew up. It got 14,000 likes. I was like, wow, okay, maybe some people agree with this. And while I don't necessarily entertain that that's any sort of a likely possibility that he's going to do that, I think if Prigozhin did fake his death, I think the smartest thing for him to do would be to stay silent and go off to some island somewhere where no one's ever going to find him and put on one of his 24 disguises and enjoy his Russian crown of Russia, jewel crown of Russia vodka somewhere else. But look, I mean, the other side of it is Prigozhin is such a he's such a chaotic, courageously chaotic individual he was, that if he would, and he's very egotistical, I think, if he were to do something like this, there's no way this guy's going to stay silent for long. After he faked his death in the DRC, 3 days later, he came out, oh my God, I'm alive. Okay, so
this idea that maybe he's not dead got 15,000 likes with his viewers. Like, okay, well, let's keep going.
I don't think he's going to stay silent if he did in fact fake his death, despite the fact that that would be exactly what he should do. Especially if this was some sort of a backroom deal, Putin telling him, you know, look, we're going to fake the death and you're going to go off somewhere and we're never going to hear from you again. I don't think that's what happened, but let's just entertain the idea, because I do think it's worthwhile, and I feel as though I didn't do a good job of it last night, and I feel bad about that, okay? So I asked the question on my Twitter and on my Telegram in anonymous polls yesterday, or today rather, just to put a feeler out there, is Prigozhin alive, okay? This is the result from the Twitter poll as of right now. So this actually is not what I expected at all. I expected 75% of people to say no, he's not.
Okay, other than me, if you watch Jackson Hinkle, because I watch him for like opposition research, right? That's the reason that I spend the time with him. Other than me, if you watch him, you're watching him because you have a pro-Russian position and you want to hear the war filtered through a Russian perspective. Okay. And 46% of that population thinks that Prigozhin's still alive.
Alive. On the contrary, 54% only said no. This is from a pool of almost 9,000 votes thus far. 46% said yes, he is still alive. On Telegram, it was a bit closer to what I expected. 67% said no. 33% said yes. And that's almost 2,000 votes. So we have about 10,000 votes, and somewhere around 50-60% say, no, he's not alive, okay? But that's still a lot of people who think he is alive, all right? And what I might add is RT and TASS have not yet confirmed the death of Yevgeny Prigozhin. So they've said that he was listed among the passengers of those on the flight, but they have not confirmed that he was dead. It's very noteworthy, of course, as I mentioned here, because
that's doing the very bottom line of what reporting is. You report when you can confirm facts, but it's pretty clear that if he was on the manifest, they found his phone, it's probably that he's dead.
Prigozhin was briefly reported to have died in 2019 after an AN-72 transport plane crash in the DRC, and then 3 days later, he came back alive. Now, I've seen conflicting reports, and we're going to get into some of those, but I might also add that the U.S. intelligence community was reported today in the New York Times as also confirming that they cannot confirm that Prigozhin is, in fact, dead.
That's simply waiting to do your due diligence, that's all.
Now, the last thing that really solidified me wanting to bring this up today was I woke up in the morning, and I was really thinking about it in the morning when I woke up, and I look at the front page of The Guardian, and what do I see? Is Yevgeny Prigozhin really dead? Not everyone is convinced. This is from The Guardian. Let's read a little bit of this, because they do paint an interesting picture. Okay? In 2019, Yevgeny Prigozhin was briefly reported to have died after an AN-72 transport plane crashed in the DRC. The embassy said 2 Russians had been on board the plane, which was also carrying members of the DRC's presidential staff. The Wagner chief reappeared 3 days later, however, reports of his death having been greatly exaggerated. As Prigozhin's business jet crashed on Wednesday in a likely political assassination, there was again an air of doubt or hesitation to declare that the Kremlin-connected businessman could actually be dead this time. Quote, "There's one huge caveat to the early reporting," wrote Keir Giles, a senior consulting fellow on the Russia and Eurasia program at Chatham House. "It's been announced that a passenger by the name of Yevgeny Prigozhin was on board, yes, but it is also known that multiple individuals have changed their name to Yevgeny Prigozhin as part of his efforts to obfuscate travels. So until we know for certain that it's the right Prigozhin, let's not.
I would never, for $1 million, change my name to Yevgeny Prigozhin before this happened. There's no way possible. It's just not worth the risk.
Not be surprised if he pops up shortly in a new video from Africa. Okay, interesting. So as we all know, Prigozhin is one for disguises. Here's some of the photos of him in various disguises that he's taken on his own cell phone and was released by the Russian authorities after the alleged so-called mutiny took place. Prigozhin also has many passports from many countries. One can assume that he's at least got name doubles, possibly body doubles. This is a very, very rich man, and he is a very curious figure. Okay, so we don't really know. We don't really know for certain what is going on, and there's a lot of people, conspiracy theory or not, who still believe that Prigozhin is alive, all right? And The Guardian apparently happens to be one of these outlets that is still entertaining the idea. Now, I saw a report from Sprinter. Sprinter doesn't always get things right. I don't either, but Sprinter posted this allegedly from Al Jazeera, saying at the crash of the site of the private plane of the first man of the Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, his phone was found, but not his body. Now, I think we can assume what they mean by this is DNA samples are being done on the bodies that were found there, because I did see videos of bodies at the site, and there were bodies there, and they were very mangled. They were dead as a doorknob. Whoever was on that flight, they were very dead. But Prigozhin's phone was allegedly found on the plane, which does lead me to suspect that, yes, he probably was on the plane as well, and his remains are going to be probably, deciphered by these, these experts, okay? Now, when I saw that, I was like, okay, he probably was on the plane. And then...
So notice his method. He goes, I believe this, but, there's this. And I believe this, but, we can't say no to this. And it's just a different way of approaching it. When I discussed it, I said, it seems probable that this is the case. All the facts seem to lead this way. I can't rule this out, but it seems this, and then I went with what seems most probable. He's doing almost exactly the opposite. Jake Bro talked about Occam's razor yesterday. That's what you should be trying to do, not trying to raise the wildest conspiracy theories. Now, I'm showing this to show you what they're actually saying, not because I believe that this is the case, but because I'm trying to show you this is what they're saying. Why are they saying it? Well, they're all saying it for the same reason. We haven't gotten to that yet, but they're all saying it for the same reason.
I'm sitting here, I'm editing videos later this morning, and I see a news headline. I'm covering the BRICS stuff, I'm taking notes on what's going on with BRICS, and I see another news headline, and it's Putin. Putin is giving a statement on the plane crash of Yevgeny Prigozhin's plane. And I think, okay, well, for certain, we're going to have clarification as to whether or not Prigozhin was, in fact, on that plane. Putin's giving a statement, and I think we'll be able to judge by his tone and his candor, what really went on here. And so then something even more interesting happened when I watched the video. So Putin commented on this plane crash of Yevgeny Prigozhin, and we're gonna watch this video because I want you guys to see what I'm talking about here. I don't think anyone really picked up on this, but I was watching it with my girlfriend, and she confirmed that the translation, she speaks Russian, she is Russian, she can.
Ding, 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 ding. Okay, now something just made sense. This is why Jackson Hinkle is so in this corner. His girlfriend's Russian, right? Scott Ritter's wife is from the former Soviet Union. She was Georgian, and he has this. So I've wondered what motivates Jackson Hinkle for a long time. Maybe he had other predilections that led him toward a positive stance toward Russia, but okay, this made sense for the first time. Let's hear what Putin had to say, because he goes over that word by word.
Confirmed that the translation was in fact correct. So let's, I want you to see what I'm talking about here. So this is what Putin had to say. As for this airplane crash, first of all, I would like to express my sincere condolences to the families of of all the victims, it is always a tragedy. Okay. And indeed, if there were Wagner employees there, and primary data suggests that there were, if there were Wagner employees there, here's
the raising the question thing again, as opposed to trying to go with what answer seems to be fit, allowing that you could be wrong.
He does say primary data suggests that there were, but if there were, what's the primary data? The phone, the name on the flight list? I mean, like, usually Putin's one to talk in these sort of absolutes when he's speaking about something as critical as this. He'll just wait to give a statement, you know? But he says, if there were Wagner soldiers on this plane, it's a tragedy. Okay, so he says if. Well, that's very interesting. He goes on to say, I would like to note that these are people who made a significant contribution to our common cause of fighting the neo-Nazi regime in Ukraine. We remember that, we know that, and we will not forget it. I've known Prigozhin for a long time, since the early 90s. He was a man with a difficult fate. And he made serious mistakes in his life. He achieved the results he needed both for himself and when I asked him to do so for the common cause, as in these last months. He was a talented man, a talented businessman. He worked not only in our country and had results, but also abroad in Africa. In particular, he dealt with oil, gas, precious metals, and stones. As far as I know, he just returned from Africa yesterday and met with some officials here. But what is absolutely certain, the head of the investigative committee reported to me that this morning they have already started a preliminary investigation into the incident, and it will be conducted in full and brought to a conclusion. There's no doubt about it. Let's see what the investigators will say in the near future. So that's what Putin had to say. I just thought it was really interesting, the phrasing he took there. If Wagner soldiers were on that plane, if Wagner leadership was on that plane. Okay, so still no definitive statement from RT, TASS, RI Novosti, anyone, Putin even, as to whether or not for certain Prigozhin and Dmitry Utkin were on that plane. Okay. Now, we then saw this. I've seen claims that Prigozhin's plane landed in Moscow, not at Moscow International, but at a different airport. I've seen claims that went back to St. Petersburg. And Sprinter posted this: Prigozhin's second plane flew to Azerbaijan. So I don't really know what to make of that, and we don't know who was on that plane yet, which I also find interesting. Here's another part of the story. Where is Artem Stepanov? Somehow that plane blew up that was listed under Wagner Prigozhin's name. Now, Artem Stepanov, how does he play into this picture? The law enforcement agencies can't find this man. He had access to Prigozhin's plane before the explosion. He left for Kamchatka, where he got lost. There are speculations that he is no longer in the Russian Federation, and this man was claimed to have been a pilot of Yevgeny Prigozhin. Investigators are, in fact, interrogating everyone who had access to the hangar where Yevgeny Prigozhin's business jet was being repaired. Of course, we saw claims yesterday that the jet was undergoing repairs prior to departure. That's not necessarily concerning, but it is something worth noting. Ramzan Kadyrov has commented on the death of Prigozhin as well, saying he was a dear friend for most of their life, for a long time, and is very sad to see this go. And he made huge contributions to the special military operation, of course. And so, all of this being said, we cannot say for certain that Prigozhin is dead.
Okay, so we're going to stop there. We can't say for certain that he's dead. I think he's dead, but we can't say it for certain because I'm going to string this out as long as I can. Like that's essentially where he's going. Now, we also have Richard Medhurst. Richard Medhurst is also in the same kind of camp, and let's hear what he has to say.
Famous clip, actually, that a lot of people were posting at the time where, the host is asking Putin, is there anything that you can't forgive? And he says, yeah, but it's betrayal. Betrayal is what I cannot forgive. And obviously, Prigozhin's behavior, I mean, I don't know how else you could describe it. We have to speculate now about what happened. There are many people, okay, who would like to see Prigozhin dead, right? As I just told you, that some of them are on the Russian side, and the majority of them are on NATO's and Ukraine's side. Now the thing is, he was pardoned, right? The charges were dropped rather against Prigozhin, and they raided his house. They filmed it and they posted it online and to humiliate him and remind him who he is and put him back in his place. But basically, Lukashenko and Putin said to Prigozhin, you can go to Belarus and move your operations to Belarus, but you're not coming back to Russia. Lo and behold, Mr. Prigozhin is flying around Russia. I just told you he died on his way from Moscow to St. Petersburg. And this is not the first time. This guy, ever since, for about like 2-3 weeks after the coup, the so-called coup, the mutiny, he didn't set foot back in Russia, but then he's zigzagging all over the place. Just 2 days ago, actually, he was in Africa, right? So there's a little bit of a debate whether he was in Mali. I think he was doing a little tour. You have to understand something. Mr. Prigozhin is not just, a military man. He's a businessman, right? So when he sees this coup in Niger, right, which I covered extensively, please go watch those videos and inform yourself. But when he sees the coup in Niger, which he supports very much, he released an audio message saying, well done, etc., right? And he knows that this is a business opportunity because Wagner have got deals with a lot of African countries, specifically West African countries, Niger's neighbors, right? I mean, no wonder they have contracts there. You know why? Because the French and the American troops who helped create these jihadists in the first place, who helped
They're the bad guys, by the way, in Medhurst's world.
Create Al-Qaeda in the first place, don't want Al-Qaeda and the jihadists to go away, because that means they would have to go away, pack up, and leave their bases. They don't want to leave their bases. The Americans and the French want to keep their bases in Africa.
So wait a minute. The Americans and French created Al-Qaeda so they could keep their bases there? Okay. Anyway, let's keep going.
Wagner, on the other hand, just want to get the job done and actually rid the country of the CIA and MI6 scourges that have been inflicted upon these African and Middle Eastern nations. Do you understand? That's why Wagner is successful. Now, with Prigozhin, was he assassinated? We are speculating. I have no clue if he was assassinated. This could very well be, mechanical error, maybe a human error, whatever it was, just a simple problem that caused the plane to crash. Now, there are people posting photographs of the debris. Once again, I cannot verify these. I have no clue whether these are actually real. Take a look at this. There you go. So, people are trying to point out the fragment holes here, right? So this could be the result of a surface-to-air missile, anti-aircraft, and so on. But the thing is, no one has reported seeing an anti-aircraft missile. There's a video that you're going to find probably if you go digging with a blue sky and a bunch of clouds and people saying, look, there's a surface-to-air missile and it's going after his plane. I don't know that. We can't prove that. We don't know. We can't verify it. This is, by the way, this is Prigozhin. This was his first video since his mutiny. And he just like randomly shows up in Africa.
Работаем. Температура плюс 50. Все как мы любим.
We are working. The temperature is plus 50. Everything as we like. Wagner PMC conducts reconnaissance and search actions, makes Russia even greater on all continents, and Africa more free. Justice and happiness. For the African people, we're making life a nightmare for ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other bandits. We are taking true warriors into service and continue fulfilling the tasks that were set. We made promises we would succeed.
Now, again, I'm going to speculate here and say that perhaps, again, it's just hypothetical, the Americans and the French were very upset at Mr. Prigozhin because he's basically coming in and, giving Niger and Burkina Faso and Mali and all these West African countries who have suffered under the French colonial boot all the more reason to kick out the current French troops because they don't do anything. They are useless. They have no intention of actually defeating the scourge that they created themselves. Now, did they shoot down his plane because they didn't want him expanding in Belarus, expanding in Niger? I don't know.
Note the same method between Hinkle and Medhurst, saying, did they do this? It could have been the Americans. Did they do it? I don't know. Okay, as opposed to trying to chase down the facts and admit humility, he's flipped it just like Jackson Hinkle did.
But this is one hypothetical, one possible reason for Prigozhin's demise. Again, the first one that I propose is simple mechanical error, right? Just because you are famous or rich or a businessman like Mr. Prigozhin, that doesn't mean, unfortunately, doesn't mean that you're immune to mechanical or human error.
And that's the most legitimate thing that he said or will say as we move forward.
On a plane, God forbid. But another thing is that, Biden saying, oh, well, Putin actually did this. This is ridiculous. Let me tell you something. I've been covering the BRICS summit. Russia wants to look good at the BRICS summit, okay? Especially because Putin was not able to come, right? Because of this ICC warrant. So, and by the way, when they played Putin's recorded speech, right? Because he can't be there physically, the whole room was like whooping and cheering and clapping for him. They did that for nobody else. Russia wants the BRICS summit to go well, okay? It's in South Africa. Nevertheless, they're a BRICS member, a founding member. They want that to go well. Why would they go and then assassinate Prigozhin at the same time as the summit and take away the attention, take away any possible benefits that they would reap from this engagement at the BRICS summit? Remember, it's not just 5 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. You got 40 heads of state who are there. Interest in BRICS, in joining BRICS, has never been higher. Never. So think on that. Now, there is a possibility here. I'm gonna raise another hypothetical, and again, we're speculating. One reason or one way that he could have been killed is that people in the Russian government or the Russian military who are so, angry and upset by Prigozhin's behavior with this mutiny 2 months ago, by his behavior when he shot down, 6 Russian aircraft and killed 13 Russian service members. They are angry at him. I can assure you, you will, if you look, you will find these people. Now, does that mean that they plotted? Some of them plotted to kill him? I don't know. What comes to mind?
But what he does know is that it wasn't Putin. He's very sure that it wasn't Putin. And in Putin's world, in Putin's system, he's never to blame. It's always the oligarch, or it's always the military general or somebody else. And that's what Medhurst is parroting. Okay, let's go over to Scott Ritter and see what he has to say. And you'll find a very similar kind of theme.
These are the bodyguards. And that's an important fact, because I'm going to bring that back to you in just a second. And they're on the plane together with 2 pilots and a 39-year-old flight attendant. And the plane blows up and hits the ground, and they're all dead. I believe they're all dead, and I believe Prigozhin's dead because the Russian president delayed his presentation to the Russian people until which time he got confirmation that Prigozhin was, in fact, on that plane and dead. I know They haven't released the body and all that. The Russian president does not get ahead of the news. Anybody who's been studying,
that's not always the case, but let's keep going. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt.
Understands he doesn't get ahead of the news. He will speak when the facts are available, and the facts are Prigozhin's dead. So now the big thing is, did Putin kill him? That's the big question, $1 million question. And Putin, on surface, has every reason to kill him. I just outlined a case where Prigozhin not only was a traitor, but is doing things that could be deemed not to be in the interest of the Russian government. Putin has said that he can forgive anything but betrayal, and Prigozhin betrayed him. So a lot of people have to go, Putin did it. Let me give you a couple of reasons why Putin didn't do it.
Okay, we're lining up. Putin didn't do it, Putin didn't do it, Putin didn't do it.
I firmly believe that Putin didn't do it. We'll start with reason number one. 39-year-old, I think her name is Katerina, but I'm not going to butcher her name, but the flight attendant. You know, Vladimir Putin, and I just did an interesting interview with Vladimir Solovyov, a very contentious, controversial person, but sort of the most influential journalist in Russia today, who knows Putin very well. And he said that Putin isn't like any other politician in the world. And what he means by that is, you know, in the United States, we know for a fact that when an American president is presented with a crisis, they have to ensure that it's spun in a way that's politically beneficial for them. There is not an American president or politician out there that says, I'll take the hit, boys, spin it, factually accurate, I'm going down with the ship, this is my bad, how do we spin? How do we lie? The cover-up is always greater than the crime, we're told, but they all cover up because none of them are honest. Putin, it's not that he doesn't care what people think about him, but according to Vladimir Solovyov, and it's something that I agree with, Putin places Russia and the Russian people above everything else.
According to Solovyov and according to Ritter, Putin places Russia above everything, including himself. Now, he's not a rich multi-billionaire because he's stolen from the Russian people and allowed his oligarchs to do that as long as they're loyal to him. So he's in la-la land at this point, but this is what he truly believes.
That everything he does is for the benefit of Russia and the Russian people. And he genuinely cares about Russia and the Russian people. And the idea that this compassionate man who literally does everything...
He just called Putin a compassionate man who literally does everything he does for the Russian people.
For Russia and the Russian people would wholeheartedly murder an innocent woman and 2 pilots is beyond comprehension.
Okay, if you believe that Putin could actually do that, just hit the like button right now to confirm that. Because what, Scott? I mean, okay.
There's people out there who hate Vladimir Putin and say, of course he can do that. He blew up a building to start the Chechen war.
And that is legitimate. He did start things, and we can find it. He's going to deny that. But yes.
Murderer. He's this. He's none of that. None of that. There's no evidence to support anything that
There's plenty of evidence.
Anybody says about him other than he puts Russia and the Russian people first. So right off the bat, that's a hurdle that can't be crossed in my mind. Now, one thing that can happen.
Okay, now if you eliminate the option, then you have to go searching for other options, and that's what Ritter's about to do.
Is people can say, well, we think Putin would be better off if this happened. To give you an example, Boris Nemtsov was Putin's nemesis, opposition leader, causing Putin problems. But Putin really didn't care about it because at the end of the day, he looked at Nemtsov's popularity and he went, I got him beat. I'm not worried about this. But Nemtsov was a pain in the neck. And he was killed. He was killed by Chechens. And what I understand is the order came from somebody who thought that he was doing Vladimir Putin a favor by ordering this hit. And it turned out that Vladimir Putin was incensed by this, furious by this. And that relationship suffered greatly because of this. Because Putin doesn't do that. Putin isn't a murderer. That's not the tools he used. I don't care what William Browder or anybody else says. He doesn't operate that way.
Because the head of the CIA doesn't know things that you're not privy to. I mean, this is the way that Ritter rolls. So let's keep going.
So, but the thing is, is it possible that somebody said, I know the boss isn't ordering this, but I think the boss will appreciate this. Let's take the guy out. And here's the thing. The list of people who would like to kill Prigozhin is long.
Well, okay, so that's the first thing that I've agreed with what Ritter said. The list is long. The Russians, many don't like him. The Ukrainians don't like him. The rest of the West doesn't like him. He probably is not all that well received in many parts of Africa.
Long, and it is diverse. It's not just Russians, but foreigners all want him dead. And the only thing that protected Prigozhin was Vladimir Putin's relationship with him. That made him untouchable.
Until he broke that relationship and undermined an authoritarian leader, which is a kiss of death, literally speaking, because an authoritarian can't abide that. Did he forgive him? Sure. Until when? Like, nobody was surprised that this happened to Prigozhin.
And Vladimir Putin's relationship with him was broken. Broken so much that Putin said, I want Prigozhin gone. I want him replaced with Troshin. And so that lends itself to the possibility that somebody did something thinking Putin would want that to happen. But the timing of this is atrocious. I mean, if you want to take out Prigozhin, you don't blow him up over a Western Russian city in broad daylight in the middle of a BRICS conference where Russia is trying to assert itself as a responsible member of the world, a leader of the world. Now what? Putin's assassinating people he doesn't like?
Sure would send a pretty powerful message to the oligarchs, though. Okay, that's all that I have. These are the conspiracy theories on each side. But if you're trying to send a message to the oligarchs, there's probably no more powerful way to send that message to don't mess with the boss than what just happened. Okay, I don't know myself what happened, but I'm saying the leading theories, Western newspapers, journalists, as far as they can understand it, is that Prigozhin, something nefarious happened. It wasn't just mechanical error. It seems to be something done to him, and that's where I'm going to land. I'm going to land with the majority of leading theories, not with the conspiracy theorists. All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention, the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.